complain less. And that's the good thing. We're having some technical difficulties. And I don't know what happened on the stream, but here no one was complaining. So I already told you where to go if fire breaks out and then the screen broke down. I'm not going to do that again because we have a fantastic screen now. So that means I'm just going to hand the mic. Is it on even?
I think it should be on.
Oh, maybe over there. We still need to touch on some buttons over here. Yep, it's also on over here because we are hosted today by Catawiki, and Justin wants to say something about Catawiki.
Hi everyone, I'm Justin. I'm in the people team of Catawiki, and the Meetup page gave me an opportunity to say something. Then hey, give me an opportunity, and I will. Well, we're Catawiki. How many people know what Catawiki is, and not the people who work here, please, or have worked here? Well, we're Catawiki, right? We are a marketplace for special objects. Currently, we are Europe's biggest marketplace for special objects, and we're trying to grow. Our mission is our North Star is to be the global marketplace for special objects. And yeah, you're currently in our office. And again, thanks to my employer for having the opportunity for us to do this. A little bit about us. We currently have around 200 people in our tech organization, roughly 100 engineers, and trying to grow that every time. And most importantly, we work with Ruby. So that's why it's a good match that we do it here today. Yeah, we're always looking for still good people to join, whether that be on engineering or any other disciplines. Please feel free to reach out to me if you want to know a little bit more. There are quite a few engineers here who you can also speak to from Catawiki. So yeah, always feel free to reach out. And yeah, thank you guys, and thank you guys for coming. That's it for me.
Prima. Thanks. Just for the people who are here. So who's working at Catawiki? Yeah? Look at them, yeah? Talk to them. So, oh yeah, the camera's having some issues. Yeah, that was on me, by the way. Look, you've been here, you've been looking at the team page, and it looked different than before. So what you see is me, Arno, Tom, he's sitting over there, and Aidan, he's sitting over there. We are the organizers of Amsterdam Ruby community thingy now, the Amsterdam Ruby thingy. Because what you didn't know is that Raita and Floor have left the building, quite literally, because they're not here this evening. We are very thankful of having them had around so much time. They did a lot of good things for us. They also decided to move on, which I guess we all do. I'm not sure if they do a lot of Ruby-esque things. I don't know. I don't even know if they did a lot of Ruby-esque things while still organizing this. But at least we are. I'll just briefly touch this topic later on. Anyway, hopefully you're on Slack. If you're not on Slack, join us and talk to us in the Amsterdam channel. Because no one enjoys DMs all the time. Let's have some public discussions going on in the Amsterdam channel. Then know that we have a code of conduct. The good thing with the code of conduct is that you know how we want to behave. And also know that if you see some behavior that is not quite sound, you can talk to us, that is Arno, Tom, Aidan, and we'll try to take care of whatever thing is going on, if anything. Then, look, I'm doing the opening statements. I have -7 minutes for that. Then I'm going to talk about the community questionnaire results. So this is going to be more of me. Sorry for that. Then there will be a second slot where Kirill will talk you through how to detect N+1 issues, which at least know that I'm going to enjoy that a lot because this is something I am looking forward to. And of course, we call it networking, but you don't have to bring your own cables. During those community events, we usually have speakers. Sometimes going to be me, sometimes going to be someone else. In January, we're going to have at least one talk. It's going to be about databases. It's going to be about Postgres. It's going even to be about logging. It's not going to be by me. So it's going to be actually fun. But we're still looking for speakers. So if you know something that might be interesting, feel free to go to Amsterdam.rb. Amsterdam.rb/speakers. also, we like pizzas. Also, we like to be in a place with screens and roofs and things like that. So if you work at a company that potentially may be looking for Ruby developers or Rails developers even, feel free to join Catawiki in hosting us. This is the best way for your recruiter to get a crap load of Ruby developers in the house. Anyway, the next meetup is going to be in January. During December, we just pretend like it's Christmas the whole month. So we're not going to see each other then. You can't do that. Anyway. But until then, we have myself. I have to switch presentations now, I guess. Then a break, and then you'll be listening to Kirill. Give me a second. Switching. It's almost the same, but now it has a white background. Welcome at Amsterdam.rb. I'm Arno Fleming. I'm having a presentation about how it is to organize this community thingy. Now you want to know who I am. Well, I've been organizing these community events for some 8 years. I've been developing software for some 16 years. My wife said, is it that long that we know each other? Because she was there most of the time. I'm getting gray now. I have glasses for reading close by. I'm really getting old. Also, I'm a freelance advisor and contributor. I have done a few jobs in those 16 years. So talk to me if you want to talk to me. Good. Let's talk about some actual content, the responses to our request for suggestions. For some announcements, you may have already know that we are saying doei to Floor and Raita. They are still doing a lot of events, so you will probably walk into them all the time. So just say hi to them. Also, there was a foundation that we started years ago when we were doing Yuruko, and it was really helpful. But that thing is also going to be ended. So that means it's just going to be us, Amsterdam Ruby, and not any other organizations anymore. This is not that interesting for you, but it's just, yeah, now you know there's not a bigger organization going on anymore. So, doei. Now, Tom and I are here to stay, and Aidan is organizing alongside with us. I gave him it's a tad bit smaller. I didn't change the presentation anymore. He's as much in as Tom and I, so the font should be exactly the same size. That really makes me happy. The problem with myself, Tom, and Aidan is they were just a bunch of white dudes. So we are always looking for input, how we can improve. That's why we had that questionnaire earlier on. But if you know something that can improve this, even if you're just another white dude, talk to us. Now, let's look at the thing that we're actually here for, not how we organize the community, but what you want. So these are going to be a few slides of walls of texts. It's quite annoying. But I had no proper way of making this visible without going into some slides that look like I'm just, well, in Excel or something. Anyway, we had some questions about the contents. You said, well, social-only events in a while are quite fine. I think we can check that box because prior to the summer break, we only had drinks on terraces. So doing that all the time. We can have more Ruby and Rails talks. Probably don't want to hear about Go, so we're not going to do that. And we're unsure about non-technical talks. People are not quite sure about it. So I'm really in favor of having also some non-technical talks, because one, it makes it easier for non-Rubyists to come to this fantastic community. Also, it makes it easy to not be just flooded by database logs and then about garbage collectors, which is fun in a sick, not at all fun way. So we may do this, but we've heard that this is not your favorite topic. You may not want to know how Scrum works for your organization. Anyway. Remote speakers are fine, but only if they're interesting enough. Well, I think that is what we try to do all the time with speakers. So you also said, and it was quite amazing to me, that Thursdays is more preferable than Tuesdays. We haven't done that since 10-ish years, I think. Thursdays are fine, Tuesdays are fine, and other days are also fine, but less than 50%, so let's just ignore them. And there were people that said, any day is good. I really love you. So if we're going to switch through Tuesdays and Thursdays, that means that the people who always have obligations on Tuesdays, because I don't know how life works, they can join on Thursdays. So we might have a complete different group on Thursday. I don't know how that works. Anyway, so we'll probably be switching after 10 years of having Tuesday-only events. So then we ask some questions about full-day workshops. You may or may not attend because, well, some are in favor, some are really against, and 7 are like, meh. So we'll just see how the 8 of you will show up. Anyway, then we also asked about, should we have some things based on level? Maybe you only want to come if it's really about hardcore Ruby things, skipping garbage collection, talking to rec directly, because that's just exactly your point. And then someone said, oh, I'm so happy that you don't. And a lot of people were against it. Some people were in favor of it. So I think we're just going to do it how we did before. If we have very, very difficult talks, very deep technical talks, we're just going to add some easier things to not fry your brain on Tuesday or Thursday. You can do that during work days or during working hours. Then we talked about workshops. Why don't you have a after-hour workshop, was a question, where we can just potentially be hacking on something that you care about? We didn't even consider that. So we're open to input. Talk to us. If you have a fantastic idea, talk to us. We can help you organize it, or you can just offload your idea to us, and we'll just see where we get it. And then you're like, this doesn't feel like my event, but we'll have it anyway. If we have full days events, the Saturday is still the best option, potentially on Friday. We usually do it in the weekend because people then don't have to take a day off. But we also know that if you have a family, Saturday is like usually so busy. And then Sundays are so busy that on Monday you think, I can go to work and relax again. So we may or may not do this in the weekends, or may not do this on Fridays. Those other days, they were really unpopular days for full day events. So talking about events, we need venues for events. If you can read the bottom text, we are very happy to talk to your recruiters. Absolutely. Also, we care about pizzas. So if you want to have more colleagues, talk to us, because we can bring a group of engineers in the house. And the camera is doing silly things again. Yeah, but that's good. Then we ask some questions about where should we be? Should we be inside the Ring A10? Because a lot of Amsterdam people think that the world ends after the Ring A10. But you said, well, as long as I don't have to take a bus, I'm fine. That is, multiple people specifically said no bus. So that made me wonder, shall we do it in the city center of Utrecht? Who's in favor of doing Amsterdam Ruby events while just party crashing in Groningen, potentially, maybe? Groningen, anyone? Utrecht? Utrecht, I hear Utrecht going on. Rotterdam, they have a vibrant Ruby community. They need more Amsterdam people there. Yeah? I see that you're somewhat happy with this idea, but not really comfortable with it. Anyway, Eindhoven? Would you join in Eindhoven? Yeah? That's why. So he knows a place or two. Anyway, so potentially I'm going to have a chat with some other organizers to see if we can just party crash over there. There's a fantastic community in Utrecht. They are not specifically about Ruby, but we should probably tell them that you have better things than Go and Java. Then about streaming. So let's just divide the room in half over here. You will never watch a stream, and you will watch a stream. That's how it is. Some people just really don't want to do this thing. It's like asking, shall we do a lockdown again? Yeah? No, you don't want that. 60% of you will see this thing as something very useful, even if they're not using it themselves. I know a few people who hadn't joined since the whole lockdown started. They are here now for the first time or for the second time again. So I'm really happy that they're here again. But sometimes a live stream is nice because you have some conversations going on even outside of this room. Also, it's expensive. So we're going to change our sponsor deal package because using all the setup to be streaming, having a camera, things like that, they just cost money. And that foundation is still financing that. That foundation that's not there anymore. Anyway, yeah. So then we had some discussions about drinks. I have to watch at the screen here because the screen over there doesn't work anymore. But so we asked, do we need more vegan food? No, not more options and not more quantity. But yeah, I really need more meat and fish, one person said. Can you raise your hand? So we just know who you are. One person saying, yeah, we definitely need more meat. And then we asked about alcoholic drinks and non-alcoholic drinks. And then potentially the same person said, well, we need more drinks, more alcoholic drinks, potentially to flush down the chicken wings in pig sauce. I don't know how that works. Anyway, so the result is you are quite happy with the food and drinks that we're offering, which is important because you're not coming here for drinks. You don't want to be here just with an empty stomach and not having anything to drink. Although I heard that tea would potentially be a good idea. So we can do that eventually, I guess. So you see the thing on the top? We're almost at the end. You said 2 long talks with questions and answers just really doesn't cut it for me. It is useful if you go in depth, but for talks like this, it should be over quickly. Let's talk about some proper content. So we're thinking about not having Q&A at the end anymore. We just have to have a chat with Kirill if he's okay with having Q&A or whether he's not with Q&A. So we'll just go with the flow. But yeah, those 30 to 40 minutes monologues, they're probably a thing of the past. So. But you really gave us a very good feeling on how we organize things. And I know this is somewhat old, this questionnaire, when we asked you to fill it out. But I think it still stands, given the fact that you didn't completely just ignore us after a summer break. Last slide. If you have any questions, we don't have a Q&A. So you know who I am, you know who Tom is, you know who Aidan is. Talk to us, especially if you want to talk or sponsor. And with that, time for drinks. You will see us back in January in a location that is still to be found for a Tuesday or Thursday community event. But for now, it's talking about how to talk as little to your database as possible, I guess, by just having less queries.
Exactly.
It's only about databases or other N+1 things as well?
And others as well.
And other N+1 things as well. I'm so going to enjoy this. Everyone, Kirill.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kirill, and today I'm going to talk about detecting N+1 query problem in your Ruby application. Couple of words about me. I'm originally from Russia and now live in Amsterdam. I've been doing Ruby since 2015. Now I work as a senior backend developer in Catawiki in payments team. Basically, our team's responsibility is about ensuring that buyers can pay and that seller get their money. And this is my email and Telegram in case you would like to contact me. All right, let's begin. A quick reminder of what is N+1 query problem. So it's a performance issue that occurs when an application makes actually more same SQL queries than needed. Let's consider a very simple example. We have users in our system and we have comments, and each user can have multiple comments. And let's consider a situation when we load a list of users, and for each of them, we also need to load their comments. And in the if approach, it would look like this. So we have a single select to select users, and then for each user, we make another select that loads comments for this specific user. So this is the problem, because we make, in this example, 3 SQL queries, which is suboptimal, because in real world, most likely your database is not on the same host when your application runs, which means that every time when you get some data from database, you make a network call, and if you do it too much, then some delay appear. So a solution is usually simple, is to preload data in a single SQL query. Sometimes it could be done via separate SQL query, like in this example, but sometimes some joins can be used to preload the data. Actually, Rails supports both approaches. All right. If we want to know if we have n+1 query problems in our applications, how can we understand this? There are a couple of gems that we can use for it. I tried to find them first in Google. It didn't bring me good results. Then I checked awesome GitHub repository. Almost for every language, there is repo which is called, for example, Awesome Ruby. It's basically a compilation of libraries from the whole ecosystem. Not all gems related to n+1 were mentioned there. Then I went to Ruby Gems, and their search is also not great. But then I found this gemdex.org website, which looks actually pretty nice, and the search is really nice. So I just entered n+1, and this is the top result. What we can see here is that it found gems. We can split them in 2 groups. First group of gems help to identify n+1 query in your application, and second group of gems that help you to actually fix the problem. So in my talk, I'm gonna cover 2 gems that help you identify n+1 query problem. It's prosopite and bullet. Let's start with bullet. Most likely you're already aware of this gem, so it's kind of default solution to find n+1 query. It's pretty old. It's about 10 years already. It has almost 7K stars on GitHub. And it allows to identify n+1 query. Then it can find situation when you actually preload data, but you don't actually use it. And third thing is unnecessary count queries when they tell you that you need to replace it with counter cache, which is actually not the always best solution. I don't know why they decided to provide this solution, but all right. So this is an example what you can get in console when this gem really finds n+1 query. But let's take a look how it works internally. Actually, Bullet applies a lot of patches for internal classes and modules of active record. And on the left, I truncated all these patches. So these 3 dots means all these patches, but basically this is the full list of all these classes that are being monkey patched. And on the right, you can see that they have different implementation for different versions of Rails. That's because internal implementation in each version can be different, and they need to apply different monkey patches. So this means that, for example, if they handle active records 7.1, there is no confidence that it will work in 7.2, right? Because someone may rewrite the whole code there. Bullet defines a rec middleware that allows us to catch n+1 queries. So this means that we can find n+1 query automatically for every incoming HTTP request, because all of them go through rec middleware. So actually what's happening here on the line 6, if bullet is not enabled, it just calls other middlewares. Otherwise, it starts processing, calls underlying middlewares, and then if it found something, then it notifies about it. There are different notifiers. It can post to console, it can write to log file. This notifier can be overridden to whatever you want. Plus, bullet automatically, again, patches active job module to allow to find N+1 queries within background jobs. All right, and internally, it also uses thread.current, which is a default place where you can put anything in a thread-safe manner. So we can say that bullet can be safely used within Puma, where you have many threads, or inside Kik. All right, but the main problem with bullet is that it works on assumptions. So it tries to analyze how active record associations are being used and try to assume that, okay, if some associations are being used in a certain way, then it may cause N+1 query. And let's take a look at this example. So we first enable bullet. So basically, we wrap our piece of code into profile method. Then we load all users. In our case, we have only 3 users. And for each user, we load their comments. So user.comments, this is an association that Active Record gives us that we can use to load data. And you can see SQL queries that are being produced. And at the bottom, you can see the warning, which is produced by Bullet that, yeah, there is 1+1 query problem. Please add this includes. So basically, preload comments data to avoid N+1 query. All right, this is fine. But this is an example when it doesn't work. So the only change that we made is on line 53. We didn't use association, but we just rewrote the query to how to load comments for specific user. And it's pretty straightforward, right? We just specify comment. We select that we want to take them filtering by user ID, and we call load. And exact same SQL queries are being produced, but in this case, Bullet doesn't catch it. And this example is pretty obvious. It's so strange why Bullet cannot handle it. Plus, these assumptions cause a lot of false positive or false negative warnings. So I provided just a simple example. There are much more other examples when it doesn't work. And if we go to their GitHub repo, we can find all these issues. There are a lot of them. And as you can see, some ones still open from 2018. So it looks like no one cares much to cover them. And we don't talk about fixed issues, right? So it's about issues that still open. All right. Let's review what advantages and disadvantages Bullet has. First of all, what is good is that it's really easy setup in a Rails application. Basically, you need to just add this gem to your gem file, and everything else is done automatically because it puts this rec middleware automatically. It applies this patch for active job automatically. So by default, it just works. And the good thing is that it's able to find unused eager loading, meaning that you really preload some data, but you didn't use it. And this feature is quite unique comparing to another gem that we're going to consider today. And surprisingly, it covers not only Active Record, but also it patches MongoID gem, which is adapter for MongoDB. All right, speaking about disadvantages, not reliable by design, because when we patch some internal code, and we assume things, it's not going to be reliable. And this gem has been on market for at least 9 years, and there are still a lot of false positives. So not sure that it's going to be fixed at any time in the future. It depends on the internal implementation of active record. So as you saw before, every new version of Rails most likely will require a maintainer of this gem to adjust it, to make it, to basically do same thing just for the new version of Rails. And again, since it's heavily dependent on active record, it doesn't work with other gems that you may use to make SQL queries. For example, if you'd like to use SQL or ROM.rb, which uses SQL inside it, this gem won't help you. And second gem that we're going to review is called Prosopite. It's relatively new. It already has 1.4K stars on GitHub. And it simply detects N+1 queries. They promise that it produces 0 false negative, false positive results. From my experience, it really does. And this is an example of the warning that you may get in your console when there is N+1 query identified. And in the README, there is, at the very beginning of the README, there is a section with examples when Prosopite can identify N+1 query while Bullet cannot do it. Prosopite doesn't define any middlewares for ourselves, so we need to do it manually. This it's pretty straightforward. This is an example of rec middleware. So basically, this is needed to enable scanning of N+1 query for incoming request, and almost the same code should be applied to make it work for background jobs. Okay, how Prosopite does work internally. So there is a subscribe method, an interesting one. So what it does is it subscribes to active record. So basically, this piece of code is being called every time when active record performs any SQL query. Active record by default uses active support notifications framework, which is available in Rails by default, to be able to subscribe to some events. And what's happening here is that for every SQL query which is being made, there's a condition on line 8. So we verify that Prosopite is active. Then we ignore all schema requests because they're being made only once at the very start of the application. And then we consider only select queries. Then we check that they're not cached, because within a single HTTP request, if absolutely the same SQL query is being made, Rails automatically cache it. So you won't go to database to get the data. Instead, it's being cached in memory. And last condition is we check whether this SQL query is ignored or not, because Prosopite gives you ability to ignore some queries. So for example, it says that there is N+1 query, but you don't agree with it, and you decide to ignore it for some reason, maybe to fix later, or just forget about it. Then interesting thing is on line 9. It uses caller. Caller is a special object from Ruby that keeps the whole stack trace of execution. Then on the second line, there is a location key is being calculated. So the idea is to remember a line of code in a file which produced this SQL query. And this location key is being calculated, and then it's being stored in TC object. Actually, TC is thread.current, the same thing what Bullet uses inside it. Yeah, so we just count how many times a specific SQL query from the same location is being called. And if it's called more than one, then we save it in another variable in our TC object to use it later. Then, when we want to start scanning, there is a scan method. What it does, it first subscribes to all these active record notifications. Then it initializes its internal state. Then it defines some configuration. For example, min and queries means how many same queries should be considered as n+1. By default, it's 2, but maybe in your case, it makes sense to set it to another value for some reason. Then it's basically have a Boolean flag prosopide scan, which is set to true, meaning that scan is started. And then it calls the block of code if it's being passed. And at the very end, in the ensure block, it turns off. And when it comes to analyzing, there is a method create notifications, which is basically goes through all aggregated data, and it verifies if indeed there is a SQL query which is that we got more than 2 by default, more than 2 times. Then we need to prepare notifications for them. Notifications mean to post somewhere this warning. Let's consider that's just post to console. There is a fingerprint. This fingerprint is the unique identifier of the SQL query which is being made. The idea of using fingerprint is to ensure that even if on a single line somehow you produce different SQL queries, you would differentiate between them, right? It's actually it's not that easy to produce different SQL queries from same line of code, but they cover this case as well. And at the very end, the finish method is being called. So it just toggles this flag, create notification. This is the method that we checked on the previous slide. And if we really found some cases of an n+1 query, then send notifications method is being called, which is actually produce these notifications. And then internal state is being reset to some new values. All right, so pros of this gem is that it's reliable by design because there's a simple idea. If the same SQL query is being produced multiple times from the exact same line of code, then it's n+1 query, which is true always. I didn't find any case when it's not true. The implementation is pretty simple. Actually, if we go to source code, we can find only one file of Ruby code with all the logic. Yeah, about disadvantages. It doesn't track unused trigger loading like Bullet does, because it doesn't analyze any associations of active record. It just looks at what SQL queries really were made. That's why it cannot understand whether we used some data that we preload or not. It still depends on active record, but not on active record itself, but on active record notifications. Authors of this gem, they hard-coded this notificator, which is hard-coded to active record one, but I believe it's pretty easy to replace it with another one and let consumers of this gem define their own notification handler. For example, if we don't want to use active support notifications or we don't use active record, it would be great if we could provide our own piece of code that would subscribe to events. I believe it's pretty simple to implement. That could be a nice contribution to this gem. And internally, yes, it generates fingerprints, but it can work only with MySQL and Postgres, because there is a simple logic. It checks if it's MySQL, then they have their custom method which produce this fingerprint. Otherwise, if it's they don't check that it's Postgres. If it's not MySQL, then they use PG query gem, which is being used to produce fingerprints. So if you use anything else, like, I don't know, Microsoft database for some reason, then it won't work automatically. So you will need to adjust it. And it doesn't bring any middlewares or some advanced notifications, because actually Bullet have integrations with other, for example, it can post messages automatically to Slack if you provide correct configuration. None of this is done by Prosopite by default, but it's still possible to define your custom logger or notificator where you can define whatever you want. We in Catawiki started using Prosopite, and we defined this notificator that pushes these warnings about N+1 query to Kibana, where we can later prepare some dashboards to track the progress of fixing N+1 query problems. That's it about Prosopite. Bonus number 1. In Rails 6.1, strict loading was added. There is a great blog post explaining everything about it. It's possible to enable strict loading by default for the whole project, or you can enable it for specific models. And it works like, if we take a look at first example, we have a user, we load it, and then we call comments. And if strict loading is enabled, then comments won't be loaded by active record. Instead, it will raise an exception, meaning that, OK, you're going to load this data, but you didn't preload it. So please do it explicitly. So to make it work, on the second screenshot, we need to preload these comments. This solves the problem partially, because yes, it helps to not miss the places where you may have N+1 queries. But as you can imagine, it cannot handle such cases, right? So here we just want to know the count of like basically how many comments each user has. And yeah, it's not being caught by strict loading. And bonus number 2 is about the fact that N+1 query problem is not only about SQL. It may appear in any data storage, because it's all about optimal way of loading data from any storage. In case of Redis, instead of, even though Redis is super fast, since it's a network call anyway, it's better to make them as less as possible. And we also find that for HTTP requests, it's also applicable. For example, if you have multiple services in your system and you need to get data from other parts of the system, or you interact heavily with some external system, then you may have you may make more HTTP requests if you perform them in a suboptimal way. Instead of, for example, let's consider. I'm not sure if I have an example. OK. For example, if we consider same case when we need to respond with a list of users, but we get data about comments from another parts of the system, instead of making 3 HTTP requests to get comments data, we can define a single endpoint that returns you all comments for the batch of users and returns all this data in a single HTTP request, which is going to be more performant, most likely. And how it can be done, in Catawiki recently, we made an experiment. For that, to be able to catch outgoing HTTP requests, we used sniffer gem, which allows you to actually, in Ruby, there are many clients to make HTTP requests, like Faraday, default Ruby implementation, and 7 or 8 other. This sniffer gem handles them all. So internally, it also does monkey patching, but that's because this is the only way to track outgoing HTTP requests being made from Ruby application. And this is an example of the warning that can be produced when we query another part of the system in not the most efficient way. So basically, this is an example when we have an endpoint and we need to return a list of users' orders. And for each order, we would like to get additional information about seller. But information about seller is stored in completely other part of the system. And this is an example of such n+1 query for HTTP request. So we're going to respond with 15 orders. And for each of them, we were making a HTTP request to get seller data. And we push it to Kibana to later found them there and prepare some dashboards. Yes, that's basically it. Thank you for your attention.
Nice. Well, thank you very much for your presentation. With that, I think it's time to just mingle, have some conversation with each other, and I think we have at most 1 hour for that.
Yes.
Then security comes by and is going to sweep us out of the office. So just enjoy the conversation, have some talks, and we'll see each other potentially in December, otherwise in January. And of course on Slack, and where not. Doei!